what I was doing is still an icebreaker. I was still opening the door to a conversation. I was still finding connection points with people, but I was doing it in a negative way. When we think about how we want people to feel when they interact with us, I don't want to dump my pain or lack of energy on other people. And in this case, it was literally strangers that I wanted to buy my stuff.
You're listening to Prospecting on Purpose, where we discuss all things prospecting, sales, business, and mindset. I'm your host, Sara Murray, a sales champion who's here to show you that you can be a shark in business and still lead with intentionality and authenticity. Tune in each week as we dive into methods to connect with clients, communicate with confidence, and close the deal. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Prospecting on Purpose. Today, we have a fun episode. I think it's pretty fun. I just went through the experience of organizing and executing a 2-day garage sale. And I don't know if any of you have hosted a yard sale in a while, but it was a beast. I really wouldn't wish it on anyone. Obviously, I'm sort of joking. There really were some lovely reminders about good humans out there, but overall, it took a lot of work. And honestly, there were quite a few interesting takeaways from a sales perspective, so I put together an episode about it. The essence of all business is an exchange of value. This statement can be pulled apart in many different ways, but for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to use the exchange being a product in exchange for money. And so a garage sale is such a great literal real world example of this in a pretty simple structure. So I'm going to use that as our kind of through line here. So quick outline of this episode. I'm going to get into some of the lessons that I've learned from executing the yard sale in regard to merchandising, marketing, sales, and then how those lessons apply to business. 2 of these lessons in particular were having me eating some humble pie, but I've committed to being authentic and vulnerable on this show. So I'm going to share those 2 takeaways today. Diving in, Murray 2-day garage sale. First up, marketing. This was such a stupid, silly lesson, but obviously, you got to get people to the house to buy the stuff. You have to get people to your driveway. So marketing is crucial. We all know this. We can't sell anything if nobody shows up. In my neighborhood, there were some pretty stringent rules about hosting a yard sale, specifically what weekend of the month we could do it. And they were really strict on the internet about not posting any signs promoting it. Otherwise, it would result in a fine. So instead, I was promoting it in local Facebook groups and Craigslist, and that was it. Well, come day 1 of the garage sale, I spent a week building up to it, loaded, woke up at 5:30 to get everything out on time by 8 o'clock. And at about 10:30, traffic was real slow on a Saturday morning. So an executive decision was made. I created 4 signs, neon color poster board, hung them down the street, breaking the rules. Well, wouldn't you know, almost immediately people started showing up because they saw the signage. So live and learn. I was upset because I didn't put the signs up at 7 a.m. I left money on the table. I missed some crucial hours of garage sale time. And of course, we removed the signs at the end of each day. But my lesson learned here is that I should have prioritized my marketing efforts and spread the word more ahead of time. And also, sometimes you have to take a risk, hang the signage, and old school tactics still work and serve as a good reminder for some of those old school tactics that tried and true, don't fix what ain't broken. Next up, this one's going to be obvious, but merchandising matters. And I had a lot of quality stuff that I cared for, and I wanted to get as much money as possible for it. So no one's going to dig through, a pile of clothes, but the clothes were neatly displayed, hung or folded, clearly labeled, accurate pricing. They move so much faster. It was such a fun little anthropological experiment into the human psyche. I had a lot of beauty accessories, face steamers, travel steamers, hair dryers, curling irons, that type of stuff. And I had it all displayed on a really cute, shelf. Talking to a woman, we're standing right next to the shelf of curling irons, straighteners, etc. And we parted ways, and I was in a little reorganization mode. So I moved all of those items to the front, closer to the sidewalk. I moved them off the shelf, closer to the sidewalk. 5 minutes later, the same woman I was talking to, standing right next to the straightener, picked it up and bought it.
it was really funny to just see playing around and seeing what worked and didn't work. That was a big takeaway. And I think one of the biggest takeaways really is just playing around to see what works best, like trial and error. Just because it looks good doesn't mean it's efficient for selling. And the goal was to sell it. So when you think about how you're merchandising your tabletop display, your lunch and learns, how are you running your trade show booth? All of this impacts how people interact with your product and service. So be open to playing around, seeing what works, make it really clear what it is, how much it costs, if that's appropriate. In this case, it was, and then remove just really any resistance between the prospect and the product, and that's going to sell it more effectively. So marketing and merchandising, check, check. Next up, let's get into the selling and the interacting with the prospects. So one big lesson I learned, and I know this, you know this, we bring it up all the time on this show. I had a teachable moment on this one though, so I'm bringing it up again, but the lesson here is don't assume anything. And I know that this tip comes up a lot in different areas, but it's a constant lesson for all of us because it applies in so many different parts of our lives and our business. I am actively working on it all the time. I'm going to share two examples here. First, some of the items that I thought for sure would be the first to go, like great product, great quality, great condition. They were still there at the end of day, midday, second day. Some examples I had like pretty new televisions, smart TVs, really nice furniture, an amazing condition, large area rugs, none of that sold. And so I don't know if it was just the style was out of fashion. It wasn't the decor style of that neighborhood. There wasn't a market fit for that product in that clientele. But then I was also shocked at what did. I had a lot of makeup that I just never used. So it was used condition, but good, partially used condition. I merchandised it really cute. It was like a little mini Sephora in my driveway, but I would have never imagined the makeup was the first to go. So don't assume on what product's the right fit for your prospects, because that leaves opportunities for us to sell them something that they might be more interested in versus pushing what we think they would want. And then on the same piece here of not assuming, garage sales attract all types of people. And I'm not going to break down all the different characters that I had visit my garage sale, but I had a few. And I will admit that there were some people that I made assumptions about, specifically around the ability to pay for what they seemed interested in. And I will tell you, I was really surprised. Paid for my stuff, got so much joy out of it. We exchanged it for money. So I feel very confidently that I treat everyone with respect and kindness. But sometimes when you find yourself in situations like this, it reminds us that we do have these predisposed judgments that we carry or assign to other people. My takeaway here is to try to be grateful for those opportunities when I'm reminded of my own assumptions or judgment, because it gives me the chance to work on it and grow, which is why I'm sharing it here. Okay, next lesson here is that the more passion and enthusiasm I had for the product resulted in way easier sales, and both parties, myself and the buyer, left really, really happy. It was so easy to sell things I was passionate about, things that I valued and cherished. They came through very clearly in conversations. I'd share the origin story of an item or how I used it in my life and how it could positively impact their life. I have a quick example. I sold my artificial Christmas tree and I loved my tree. It was beautiful. It looked real. It had two different types of fake pine that you could kind of fluff up so you couldn't see through those scrawny artificial fake tree branches. The takeaway here is that with whatever you're selling, find what lights you up about it and find the connection point that you can establish with your prospect. The gentleman who bought my tree told me that he was considering it for his daughter. So I started to ask him about his daughter. And turns out she's an elementary school principal. The Christmas tree would most likely be in the lobby of the school or in her office. Like, oh my gosh, so stinking cute. So warms my heart that little kids are going to enjoy my beautiful tree that I loved. It was the easiest sale. I was happy. He was happy. His daughter was stoked. So that's the ideal combination for any type of exchange. Another lesson that I learned was to meet people where they're at. And I think I do this pretty well in sales. You have to really flex to your client's communication style. So if you have someone who's very direct and bullet points, you're not going to give them a whole long novel, right? You have to meet people where they're at. But this was particularly noticeable when I got to potential buyers who were really pushy, aggressive, really haggling on the price point, bringing me down, pulling out only $4 when I said it was 10. It's like, well, you accept $4. What's funny is that that type of stuff doesn't bother me because, I'm here to play, folks. It doesn't bother me if somebody's being assertive or aggressive on their pricing, because what I have learned over the years is that if someone's communicating to you that way, you are kind of allowed to communicate it back in that same style. So I had this family that kept adding things to the pile and just pushing me down. At one point, I was like, come on, guys, no, stop. You're getting this for this, this for this, this for this. This is your price. They said, okay, that's fair. You're allowed to be a little bit, meet people where they're at. And I think clear, direct communication is something that person wanted. So that's what I gave them. Be flexible, meet people where they're at, and communicate in the way that they want to receive their communication. So then the next piece here, the next lesson, this is something that I talk about all the time, and I got served again a little bit of a teachable moment here, a humble pie moment. The takeaway lesson is to leave people feeling energized. And I talk about it in my workshops all the time. And so I'm embarrassed to admit that I struggled with it in my garage sale. A little bit of context. My mental state and my physical state were both pretty drained. Took a week or two to get the garage sale together. We were selling a lot of really heavy furniture items, so a lot of physical labor preparing for it and the day of. There were some elements of emotional labor to it because I was selling a lot of items that belonged to my late grandparents. And that, of course, brings up a lot of feelings when you're saying goodbye to things that are special to you. So I wasn't in my full force, positive, perky Sara. What I didn't realize is that when people would walk up, they're fresh, they're brand new. I've been doing it all day. They'd say, hey, how's it going? And I'd make comments like, oh, we're a little tired, or it's been a long day, physically and verbally, I was showing some draining energy. And my parents were both there because we were selling a lot of my grandparents' items. And my dad pulled me aside and he pointed out that I was kind of greeting people with, I'm tired, we're drained, we're tired. And him sharing that with me was like getting hit in the face with a big splash of cold water. It was so eye-opening. I guess I just wasn't really recognizing that that's how I was approaching people. And so I felt terrible, but I was so grateful he pointed it out to me. I thanked him for pointing it out to me. I stopped doing it. And I think, following a lot of what we talk about on this show, what I was doing is still an icebreaker. I was still opening the door to a conversation. I was still finding connection points with people, but I was doing it in a negative way. When we think about how we want people to feel when they interact with us, I don't want to dump my pain or lack of energy on other people. And in this case, it was literally strangers that I wanted to buy my stuff. So really, we need to make sure and prioritize that when we're finding those icebreakers, we're finding those connection points. You absolutely can do it in a negative space. You're waiting in line and the line is long, and you turn around to the person behind you and say, can you believe this line? The people that work here are so slow. You can find connection points of negativity, but for me personally, that's not how I want to leave other people. So we can start a new relationship either way, and I want to steer my interactions towards being positive. So it was really helpful takeaway. Thank you, Dad, for pointing that out to me. And I'm embarrassed to share it with this group, but I did it and I fixed it and I moved on, and I hopefully won't do it again. But I also hope I never have to do a garage sale again for many, many years. It is difficult to let go of stuff. I acknowledge that, especially items that are special to us or important to us. When I was selling their stuff, I was focusing on the new owner and how much joy they were going to get out of it. And I took so much comfort in knowing that those items were going to someone who appreciated it and valued it. The final reminder, takeaway lesson here is that change is good and change moves us forward. Thank you for listening. Your support means the world to me. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe, share, and leave a review. If you are hosting a garage sale, good luck to you. Signing off on another episode of Prospecting on Purpose. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you so much for listening to the Prospecting on Purpose podcast. If you loved what you heard today, subscribe to the podcast and please rate and leave a review. For more info on me, or if you'd like to work together, feel free to go to my website, saramurray.com. On social media, I'm usually hanging out at Sara Murray Sales. Thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you next time.